I want to say, look, of course people don't agree, but we have a country that is based on human rights, democracy, and so forth. But I'll tell you what Lincoln thought, what Washington thought, and what people today still think. It's an experiment.
Liberal Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer is retiring after serving for nearly 28 years. This week, EWTN News Nightly White House correspondent Owen Jensen asked White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki if Biden's nominee will be pro-abortion. He also asked when the president believes human life begins. Psaki refused to answer both questions. Biden's nominee won't change the current 6-3 conservative majority, but Breyer's replacement will almost certainly be confirmed by a Senate narrowly controlled by Democrats. And joining us now is Helen Alvare, professor at the Antonin Scalia School of Law at George Mason University and Robert Levy Chair in Law and Liberty. Thanks for joining us, Helen.
Thank you for having me.
I first want to get your thoughts on Justice Breyer's retirement. What were some of his decisions concerning abortion? I know that Reuters referred to him as a fortifier of abortion rights.
Yes, Justice Breyer has been particularly active in recent cases concerning whether or not states could try to make abortion clinics a little safer and require the doctors there to actually have admitting privileges at other places. Laws regarding off-brand use of RU-486. Justice Breyer has been a complete supporter of legal abortion. Absolutely no dissent from abortion on demand. And all I can say is that I'm glad that at least his replacement can't be any more doctrinaire in favor of legal abortion.
We'll certainly be tracking who will replace him. Now, shifting gears a bit, you led a stellar brief in the Dobbs late abortion case being considered by the court. In the brief summary, you state there simply is no causal link between the availability of abortion and the capacity of women to act in society. Could you explain how you came to this conclusion?
Right. Well, thanks for bringing that up and your kind remark on the brief. It appears to a lot of people that in the most recent important abortion decision, the Casey decision in 1992, the majority opinion suggested, didn't make it the basis for the holding, but suggested that women are not free in society without legal abortion. If you think about this for even a minute, it's depressing and demeaning altogether. So even though that is not the precise issue at hand in the Dobbs case, the Mississippi 15-week abortion law before the court, myself, Erica Bakayaki, Teresa Collette, and Elizabeth Kirk, 4 female law professors, thought we'd better address that question before the court. And we used a lot of really good empirical data to show that even while abortion rates and ratios, the numbers of abortions per 1,000 women, the numbers per pregnancy, even though they've been drastically declining in the last 30 years, all kinds of female accomplishments have been going up, up, up. So even just to make the simple case, not the philosophical case, not the theological case, but the empirical case, that you cannot draw a causal relationship between women pursuing abortion and succeeding on some of the traditional measures.
So insightful. And the pro-abortion side cites data from the Turnaway study, a study focused on suggesting the opposite, that women need access to abortion to succeed. What did you have to say about the Turnaway study in your brief?
Boy, you strike a nerve when you mention the Turnaway study. The Turnaway study claims to show that women who were turned away from having late abortions because a clinic stopped at 24 or 25-week abortions fared worse in life than women who had late abortions, but right under the number of weeks that the clinic permitted. I hope people will take a look at my brief, which is printed on the SCOTUS blog Dobbs page. But that set of studies, funded by abortion advocates, published in pro-abortion journals, was nothing like what it claimed to be. It didn't really measure women who hadn't had abortions versus women who had, because it messed up the categories. Many of the women who were turned away went and had abortions elsewhere. Many of the women who got abortions ended up having replacement children. It wouldn't share its statistics so other people could run the numbers and see if it actually could be replicated. They failed to account for the radical differences between the lives of women who make it to an abortion clinic on time, sort of the chaotic lives, very chaotic, that characterize women who try to come to a clinic at 28, 29, 30 weeks. So I urge people to take a look at it. You're going to hear that the Turnaway study is the be-all and end-all to say that women who get abortions do better. And I think we do a really good job completely dissecting that claim.
And very quickly, the brief also points out that while those who are pro-abortion claim that Roe and Casey were liberating for women, the data actually proves the opposite, that there's a correlation between abortion and women's declining levels of happiness and achievement. Could you briefly elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'll try to be real quick. We show, first of all, that they completely ignore that even some very strongly pro-legal abortion scientists conclude that on average, abortion harms women. We also point out that when abortion sort of sucked all of the oxygen out of the case for women and women's empowerment in the country, it left politicians free not to assist women and children and families in ways that women have been crying out for decades. They gave us more abortion, like this new HHS task force, but really nothing else.
Well, I very much enjoyed reading your brief, and it taught me a lot. I hope everybody at home will read it as well. Helen Alvare of George Mason University, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We continue this discussion with Stephen Billy, Executive Director at the Charlotte Lozier Institute. Stephen, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I wanted to get your thoughts first on Justice Breyer's retirement and how that's going to impact the court this year and beyond.
So I think in the short term, there's probably not going to be much that changes, especially in regards to the Mississippi late-term abortion case. He's not retiring until the end of the term, but I think it is going to bring up the issue of abortion more broadly. And as we go into the midterm elections and as we look to see, is President Biden going to nominate somebody to the court who is going to put ideology ahead of what the Constitution says, or is he going to put up a nominee that's willing to follow the science and accept the fact that fetal pain does exist, or accept the medical advances that have been made since 1973? So I think that's really going to be where the impact comes longer term for the midterm elections, and then also for who he puts on the court in the next term.
Interesting. We'll be keeping our eye on that for sure. We heard a lot from Professor Alvare about how there's really no causal link between access to abortion and women's success and happiness. Can you speak to the scientific aspect of that question? What does abortion affect when it comes to women, their well-being and their ability to really interact in society?
Yeah, well, the work that Professor Alvare has been doing has been a great complement to Charlotte Lozier Institute studies. We've been looking at 8 million pregnancies and 5 million women in Medicaid data. And what that data has shown us is that only about 1% of women have actually used abortion to separate their children or have a child spacing to determine when they're having children. And what we've also seen is that if you have an initial abortion, you're more likely to get pregnant and then have a subsequent abortion. So it's not advancing women further. The data is actually showing that women aren't using abortion to determine when they're having children, and that it's actually putting them in a cycle of more and more abortions.
How unfortunate. And you alluded to this just a bit ago, but could you tell us how advances in science and technology have changed since Roe versus Wade went into effect?
Absolutely. There's been incredible scientific and medical advancements in 1973. I think the easiest way to see it, since we're kind of a visual learning people, is to look at the image of an ultrasound from 1973 when it was a black background with some white specks on it. Today you can see everything about the child in the womb. You can see them sucking their thumb. You can see them responding to pain if they're getting anesthesia during fetal surgery. And what we know today about the unborn child is just incredibly advanced compared to what it was in 1973.
So important. And finally, I just wanted to get your reaction to a statement on the Dobbs case that I found on a pro-abortion website. It says, "It's not a coincidence that Mississippi is the poorest and blackest state in the union. Abortion bans are intended to keep poor people in poverty and keep white people in charge of everything." Your thoughts on this?
I think it's such an incredibly sad outlook on life and misses the entire dignity of the human life. when you look at the compassion of the people in Mississippi, they've elected legislators and governors and state leaders that want to serve women, that want to make sure that women have the support they need so that they can carry out their pregnancies. And I think that quote also shows that the legacy of Margaret Sanger is still alive and well in the abortion industry. The inverse of that statement is that they want the ability to end more black babies' lives, and they want to end the lives of people, of unborn children, simply because they would be born into poverty.
Right.
And that's the human weed in the eyes of Margaret Sanger, and it's a legacy that they just simply can't escape.
Stephen Billy, so insightful, of the Charlotte Lozier Institute. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good to be here.